Hello, I'm Helen Ferris, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon, hosted by Sefas. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping points. You should all be muted and your cameras turned off. This webinar is accredited for CPD points, if relevant to your ongoing professional development programme. The video will be available on our website, hosted by YouTube, and following the event, we'll email you for valuable feedback. If you'd like to ask a question, please do by going to the chat button at the top of the screen. This will be answered at the end of the session by way of a Q&A. Today's webinar, In Crisis Lies Opportunity, is brought to you by Karen Peters, Head of Insurance Markets Northern Europe at Sefas. Karen has worked in software sales for approximately 16 years, identifying and solving problems relevant to the insurance and financial services markets. Her role has evolved from a consultant identifying business process automation opportunities to now focusing on customer communication management, driving digital communications for the insurance and financial services sectors. Karen will be discussing some of the current working from home challenges and looking at solutions for tackling them, something we all need at this time. So an interesting presentation ahead. Over to you, Karen.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Thanks very much for that introduction. Just as a quick one, joining me today will be John Stinchcombe. He's a business development director at Speedgraph. I've known John for a very, very long time, so I'm really, really happy and pleased that he's joining us today. John's career is spanned, I think, about 40 years in IT and systems, and has included a decade of software developer before running his own business. John brings a wealth of experience as he has worked with partners to deliver hundreds of digitization and digital transformation projects across EMEA. Okay, add a next slide, please. Okay, so before we kick into the working from home challenges, just a little bit about Cefas and why we're speaking here today. So, the topic is about working from home, so let me just raise a couple of challenges that I might have before I get into full swing. We've all seen the clip of the baby walking in and the dogs barking and all of the rest of it. I don't have any of that, but I do have a 20-year-old son, and I have a big notice on my door, but if he does barge in, I will apologise in advance. So, okay, what you can see here is why would, trusted by organisations such as yours. We've worked with these organisations, and working with them has given us an opportunity to gain an insight into developing solutions to meet the needs of financial services clients such as yourselves. And by joining the MGAA, we have started to gain a greater appreciation of the unique needs in your sector. As you can see, we've got many clients, all within insurance and banking. These are just a select few of our financial services clients. Whilst we have a relatively small client base, our reach does about 200 globally, I think. So it goes much further than that. Also, the outsourcing print providers in the UK, so all of the people that still send you the bank statements and insurance policies, all these print providers, the top 4 are actually using Cefas software. So Adam, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, just a little bit of background about us. Cefas has delivered solutions to improve customer communications. About 25 years, I think you can see. We're a French-owned company, and it sits under the umbrella of DockerPost. Now, you may not know DockerPost, but they're a very large global organisation, and we fit as one of the subsidiaries. And what we do is we are committed really to just bring digital transformation. So Cefas has a focus on enhancing the customer journey through delivering inbound and outbound customer communications. So through acquisition and partnerships, we have extended our process automation capabilities, taking static outbound communications, cover notes, contracts, policies, statements of facts, personalised correspondence, etc., to digital bidirectional communications that result in a better customer experience. We have introduced AI, artificial intelligence, electronic signatures, and with our partnerships with Kofax RPA, robotic process automation. I think another key trend is the shift to move to the cloud, and this again is something we have invested heavily over the last few years. We've seen a dramatic increase in delivering digital communications compared to pre-COVID. So digital transformation, CX and omnichannel, these are very, very hot topics, as I'm sure you all know. It's great that you've joined us this afternoon. We really do appreciate your time. So let's hope it's time well spent. And we've now got a few things that hopefully you can take away from today. Adam, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so some of the learning objectives, bold statements. So as we respond to the challenge of COVID-19 as a nation, I think we're all adapting our ways of working to support each other and our customer. So today we've been talking through some of these challenges and what can be done to meet them. Every one of you have dealt with these for the last 6 months or so, so I'm not here to teach you how to suck eggs. But let's take a look at what post-COVID April 2021 might look like. I will be introducing John shortly, but let's take a look at some of the challenges being faced by organisations such as yours, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a people perspective. Your clients, consumers and colleagues. We cannot underestimate the impact this unique situation has had on the people that keep you in business, help to maintain and grow your business. So looking at tools to support them in this weird and wonderful world that we're living in at the moment. So, which all of us has got to take as higher priority. So Adam, could you go to the next screen, please? Okay, some of these facts I found quite amusing when I first looked at them. Particularly the UK worker force. But clearly, for many workers, COVID-19's impact is depending greatly on one question: can I work from home? Quarantines, lockdowns and self-imposed isolation have pushed tens of millions around the world to work from home, accelerating a workplace environment that had struggled to gain any traction before COVID-19 hit. I've been very fortunate working in the environment that I do, that I've been very lucky to work from home and have the ability to work from home for many years, and not everybody's got that luxury. So whilst the future of work is coming sooner than expected, the solution is clear. Engaged employees supported by managers with empathy in a tech-enabled environment that motivates them to become really customer obsessed will be a key factor in determining not just which of us survive this current crisis, but which of us go on to create the employee and customer experience that will make the future possible. Okay, can you go to the next slide? So is there a crisis, a customer service crisis, the customer being the internal and the external customer? So the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic has turned the world upside down and is unique. I don't think any one of us can dispute that. Not one of us has seen anything like it. However, there is a real and ongoing challenge that we all now face and will continue to face as we march into the territory loosely called the future of work. So whilst no one is clear how this is going to pan out, we need to embrace it. I hope to embrace it today. When we talk about the customer, the wonderful, wonderful person that we all want to hold on to and love, we sometimes forget the people that sit inside our organisation, the worker, or more specifically, the knowledge worker, the ones that keep our customers happy. So let's take a look at meeting the challenges of both the internal and the external customer. I've drawn three sort of observations that I want to take a look at. Consumers have been forced to go nearly 100% digital, not next week or month or even next year, it's now. So businesses have to redefine their communication strategy. High street branches, banks, insurance, building societies have all closed. You can tell I wrote this a couple of weeks ago because they're open now. So, but it's never going to be the same as what it was. And I don't know what the City of London looks like today, but that wonderful, vibrant city that we all know and love has been very quiet and eerie the last time I went up there. If I'm honest, I've not really missed the central line or bank station at first thing in the morning or last thing at night. But it's kind of becoming a rapid and fading memory. The pubs finally have reopened, but how many of you have booked a table for this evening, I wonder? Because that's where a lot of business is done in the city. Although some people are returning to the workplace as we get lifted from lockdown, we can't forget the many that could not work remotely. Both the mental and the financial implications of this is really not, we've not seen it in its full force. I read a recent survey, and I hope this was going to be true, that hybrid models of remote work will be here to stay. It's true that the virus has broken through all barriers that prevented remote work in the past, setting a structural shift in where work takes place, at least for some of us. So I suppose the question is, are we all prepared? Adam, could you go to the next screen? Okay, so how do we respond? I believe automation and employee empowerment will be the big differentiator as to who will fail and who will survive. Remote workforce and automation is now a joined-up strategy for many and is an emerging trend, I think, that's here to stay. Even as we return to the office buildings after lockdown, businesses will still continue to automate activities. Robots and automation had only really just begun to reshape the workforce. Automation of some sort will transform 80% of jobs by 2030, which is a staggering figure. Many of the tasks your workforce does today can be done better and in some cases more cost effectively. Robotics has had a growing uptake, particularly in financial services over the last few years. Take those manual, repetitive tasks away. The value is not in reducing your headcount, making people redundant. We've seen far too much of that just lately. It's in supporting your knowledge workers, giving them the tools they need to be valued and to be successful. Okay, that's thanks for listening to me so far. I'm now going to hand across to John. Okay, next slide, Adam.
John, sorry, I think you're on mute.
Ouch, that wasn't a very good start. I'll rewind. Thank you for that. Well, greetings, everyone. Greetings from a not-so-sunny West Gloucestershire. And I want to thank everyone for, I'd like to thank the MGAA for the opportunity to speak and also for the opportunity to wear a tie for the first time in a long time. So, yeah, it's great to be here. And as Karen has gone through, we're going to be talking about, the challenges of working from home, not immediately obvious to everyone. But I'm just going to touch on some of those factors and then go through and look at some of the technological solutions that we can consider to address some of those challenges, but also, as Karen has pointed out, address some of the challenges that are likely to be challenges in a hybrid situation going forward. Let's hope that the announcements this morning about this magical vaccine, that we're well on our way to, beating this crisis, this pandemic. I want to stay optimistic about it. I think we will get through this, but it's going to be a long haul. And if we can turn to more effective ways of working, hybrid systems, it's going to change. There's no doubt, and some of those changes are going to be permanent. So let's get straight in it. Adam, next slide. So what are the risks? I know I'm talking to the MGAA about risk. Oh my God. So what are the challenges of working home? What are the risks? Well, top of the tree really is an inability to execute a job function. So this varies from individual role to individual role. Some individuals will be working at their point in their career, in a team environment. It depends on the culture of the company they're working for and the facilities and systems that that company has around it. For example, some roles, some processes, some industries, they work on a very strong reliance on tacit knowledge. So they work in groups, and the more senior in the groups will mentor the more junior members of that group. And there's a lot of process knowledge that's held in people's heads. And they tend to give a project to somebody to work on, and then they, should I dare I say it, they struggle their way through, and then at the end, it's completed. Contrast that with a highly prescribed environment where you will have a system, process orchestration system, frameworks to adhere to, and checkpoints. And, there is less of a demand on tacit knowledge. Certainly the more senior members of the team are there to support junior members and less experienced members, newer members to the team. But it's very important that, it does vary from individual to individual role, and mustn't lose track of that. And so it will vary. One thing I will say is a lot has been made about the mental anguish and stress and anxiety of this change, this pandemic, and the inability to perform your job, particularly if you're inexperienced or new to an organization, will weigh very, very heavily on an individual. It mustn't be dismissed. So, that ability to execute a job function is one of the major risks or challenges of working from home. So the next one is access to systems. So in my career, and particularly in the second half of my career, the last 20 years, I've worked for a digital transformation vendor, Kofax. So I worked for them for 20 years, and they're very often brought into situations where there's business continuity planning. Looking at disasters, I don't think pandemic was ever one of those disasters that was up there, but certainly they were looking at situations where there was an over-reliance on paper records, for example, an over-reliance on legacy systems. That's a buzzword term for older systems that haven't been replaced yet, legacy systems. They're from my era. And not having access to those systems, not being agile enough to change with changing legislation or changing ways of working. And guess what? We're now in a massively changed way of working. So if only we could have foresaw some of this, then I'm sure the uptake of those thin client applications, those frameworks that allow key processes to be monitored and measured and allocated at a task level, I think the uptake of those would have been far greater. And, perhaps decisions to switch off or migrate away from these heavy-duty legacy systems, would have been taken earlier, because there's no doubt it's a small number, by the way. If there's some upside in the timing of this pandemic, at least we are where we are in terms of adoption of thin client computing, corporate wide area networks, and general, capability around computing. I can't put a number on it, but it's probably less than 20% of systems are impossible to get to from a remote working environment. I am sure, by the way, there's a dirty little secret that a lot of compromises have been made as well in order to force the issue, because when the first lockdown happened, there was no choice over the matter. you had to work from home and you had to muddle through, and I'm sure that there were some compromises made in terms of access to systems around security and dare I say it, even privacy. One of the biggest issues, of course, is access from, I'll call it domestic networks, Wi-Fi systems. Not everyone lives, in the middle of a field like I do. You know, in more denser environments, you might be in an apartment or a flat where Wi-Fi is multiple Wi-Fis are competing, and Wi-Fi is not the most secure access. We have VPN, we have lots of technical solutions, but whether they were rolled out quickly enough, who knows. So the next one is absence of interaction. This again is a big one. We are social animals, and we spend a third of our time, our working careers, at work. And for many of us, that is in the office, working with colleagues, and we miss it. And I've already mentioned about tacit knowledge and transfer. A lot of our colleagues are our friends as well, and so to take that away, is quite hard, and something that has to be factored in, because it's an old-fashioned phrase, but the morale gets impacted. And are there technological solutions around that? Well, maybe not. One of the things is this massive adoption of Teams and Zoom and anything else, but does it fill the gaps in for that absence of interaction, that support? No, it doesn't. And in fact, on that matter, the next point is supervision, support, and mentoring of team members from monitoring the work they're doing, ensuring the productivity rates are maintained at a high level. In fact, the feedback is, I saw one survey that said that productivity had gone up in a work from home environment, and I'm not surprised. I mean, if I take my case, I've been working from home on and off for probably 30 years. I am way more productive in a work from home environment, but those that are not used to it, it takes a bit of adapting, and it really comes down to these next 2 points: the work-life balance and the suitability of a working environment. I've heard some horror stories. One anecdotal thing is that people look at your calendar and they simply book Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, and there is no rest time or time to catch up on email, time to get a coffee. It's relentless, one Zoom meeting after another. Whereas in a physical environment, people they have empathy about the time it takes to get to a different location. Some of that seems to have gone out of the window in the worst cases. In fact, the worst anecdote I heard was that this was a sales environment. They were calling a sales meeting at 7 p.m. on a regular basis because they knew everyone was at home, which is a bit naughty, to say the least. So, those are some of the risks. Some are immediately obvious, but the top of the tree are this inability to execute your job function, because you have to work in a group, and the access to systems and information, those really go hand in glove. And then the rest are the benefits of meeting up regularly and a suitable working environment. The suitable working environment, I know, there are some households where there may be 3 or 4 adults all working from home simultaneously, and having a quiet professional environment where you can get on a Zoom call without being interrupted is challenging, and making sure you can get the job done. So without more of that, Adam, let's look at some of the, if you could go to the next slide, please. Let's look at just some of the areas, the solutions, the areas for improvement. Well, as I mentioned, I worked 20 years plus for Kofax, and they were really one of the early developers of digitization scanning technology. Back in the day, they were a very, very large player in that digitization market. And so enterprise customers, banks, insurance companies, financial services in general, medical records, they were they were digitized for compliance reasons. And then as the market changed, as corporate networks improved, access to information. And then I came across a very interesting phrase that, as you see lots of individuals and lots of companies, lots of meetings, you hear these little phrases pop up, and it was outsource enabling processes, outsource enabling. So in other words, they were digitizing paper records ready when they were ready to outsource them to either offshore or to third-party organizations. So, that was one of the early drivers. Now, I know for a fact that the BPO, business process outsource market, has really had a good time during the lockdown, because they've been taking on lots of emergency digitization work, where organizations have realized our people are remote, our paperwork, our files that they need access to are in a central location. So they've been scampering around, getting literally millions of documents digitized and tagged, indexed, so that they can be readily accessed by colleagues working from a home environment. So the next one really is automated document processing. And just going back to stress, anxiety, juggling, lots of things. Working from home involves compromises on both parties, and one of the things we can do as employers when we're thinking of remote teams is to be kind to those remote teams and have empathy for the situation that our colleagues are in. And so one of the ways you can be kind is to free up some time, to implement automation, so that, or to accelerate plans for automation, so that a knowledge worker does not have to perform the tedious non-value-added tasks of indexing their own documents or going into email and detaching a file and then uploading it manually. Sorry if I'm waving my hands around. It's just what I do. But attaching it manually to a case file and then adding some fields of information, that sort of work is the domain of automation, whether it's robotic process automation or a traditional intelligent document processing solution. That technology has been around for 10 years plus. Organizations have got round to it. But we really shouldn't be exposing our knowledge workers to what's called swivel chair automation, where we move from one application such as email to another application, our case management or our claims management system, or our policy administration systems, our underwriting core line of business systems. We shouldn't really be in email at all. Email is massively overused for the wrong things. It should be a communications system, a messaging system. We seem to have grabbed it as a generic catch-all for everything. Oh, just email me the record. And again, thankfully, from a timing point of view, those documents processes that involved with medical claims, for example, bodily injury, those could never be sent by email in the past. So hence they were a lot of law firms, a lot of insurance companies would send out paperwork to each other because that was deemed an acceptably secure method of moving claims involving medical records or medical information. The industry, the insurance industry, moved over the last 5 years to a set of portals now. The only downside is everyone has their own portal. So a typical law firm working with multiple insurers might have 15 or 20 portals that they routinely have to go in. I mean, they've virtualized the paper. There still remains the task of some poor soul that has to go into these portals, log into the portal, draw down, download the document, and again, sort of manually upload. That's not the case in every portal, by the way. Some back-end systems, such as Guidewire, have an integration with the leading portals, but there's an awful lot. I would say more than half of those portals require human intervention. That's a trivial, non-value-added task that is very error-prone and time-consuming. It's linear. The amount of documents that need to be drawn down from those portals and then uploaded into a case management or a policy administration system is proportional to the number of volume. The volume. It's linear. You need more people if you're receiving more documents, and so there's inevitably delays in there. There's risk of error and all those things. So, automated document processing is definitely up there on the list of being able to win back some time, some bandwidth from our knowledge workers who frankly are employed for their experience, their knowledge. And then similarly with business process management, this gives us real wins. And I'm not talking about enterprise-wide business process management. No, start small, identify some key processes and tackle those first, and then move on to the next ones. What do they give us? Well, they give us those frameworks, those systems for knowledge workers to work to, rather than relying on tacit knowledge of our colleagues and peers, and rather than relying on having somebody mentor you and check everything you're doing. You can then become more autonomous. You can work from home, and even in a hybrid situation, you could say, well, I'm working on a backlog. I'm going to work from home for 3 days this week, and I'll be in the office for a couple of days. So that's the future of work, having this flexibility to work. I once had a manager who said that work is a process, not a place, and he was exactly right. As long as you can get the job done and you have the facilities to get that done, then great. So the last point on here is discover or content insight, discovery, that should say, or content insight. A lot of what we're working, a lot of the information we work with is unstructured. Now, up front, you can go in there and tag it. You can try to pull out a structured data set to enable you to retrieve it, but there is a point of diminishing returns on that. That means that it just becomes prohibitive both in terms of effort, time, cost, and everything. So you can use automated document processing to provide the essential structured fields, and then you can use discovery or content insight tools to allow you to locate and retrieve core documents. There's a flip side to it as well. From a compliance point of view, that you will inevitably have within your repository of unstructured information, you will have a thing that has the acronym ROT, R-O-T, standing for redundant, outdated, or time non-timely, basically out of date information. And so these insight tools allow us to say, look, this file has been duplicated in these locations. You really should be removing it other than the one copy that is in the right place. so that everyone is working on the latest version of it. And similarly, if documents contain sensitive information, then you really should take steps to identify those documents, and for your own organizational sake, make sure that those are ring-fenced, they're put in an area with proper access control to reduce inadvertent disclosure to the wrong individuals, whether they be employees, colleagues, or external parties, or accidentally forwarded onto external, as in a breach. And so, those discovery and content insight tools are pretty critical. Adam, next slide, please. Thanks. So we made an attempt to summarize these areas. So if you look at the left-hand column, these are the challenges, and then across the top, the first row are the potential solutions. They're not all the solutions. I've snuck another one in there, RPA, robotic process automation. This really sits into the process orchestration side. So it allows us to identify individual tasks, these tasks that individually only take a knowledge worker between perhaps 90 seconds and 3 minutes, but are almost entirely rekeying of information, staging of information, updating systems, moving information that I already have into another system. And so if we can identify that perhaps a team of 25 people are on average doing this, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times a day on average each, then that multiplies up into an aggregate set of individual tasks that, if taken off the table, are worth automating. And the idea is that you systematically find these small tasks that can be partially automated. I'm very nervous about saying entirely automated because that's not reality. We're not talking about an automatic gearbox in a car, that you after a while you just forget it's there. We're talking about things that still need inputs from knowledge workers. There may be just one aspect of that 3-minute task that you have to think about. That can be done at the beginning, and then the robot just does the rest. So RPA is a key one of those solution areas. It's just aligned with BPM, business process management. And then what we did in sort of heat map style, we went across each one of these rows, trying to match the two areas. And I won't go into it on this call, but it varies from situation to situation, scenario to scenario, organization to organization, and it's largely dictated by the sorts of systems that you have already in place, the processes that you're undertaking, but it's a useful way of heat mapping, if you like, where those challenges are and potential solutions. Next slide, please, Adam. So really, just to review the points that Karen went through at the beginning, I hope that this last 20 minutes of me going on about some of the obvious challenges and the potential solutions, hope you've picked 3 of those that are potential solutions, whether they be digitization of digitization of paper records, whether it's the application of BPM, a system or a framework, if you will, or the ability to identify sensitive data in repositories of unstructured information that once you're outside the corporate firewall, then it becomes very risky for people working remotely to access that information. So I hope that you've got 3 of those. And then, to identify some of the key working challenges, as I say, that depends on your environment and your particular setup. And then I hope I've given some insight to the less obvious challenges faced by work from home colleagues and some of those solutions to address them. With that, I will hand back to Karen. So Adam, if you can do the necessary, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. That was great. Thank you very much. When we first started looking at this, it's like, well, we are where we are, and we're here today. And I think John alluded to this a little bit earlier. You know, it's how could anybody plan for this? Benjamin Franklin jumped into my head. You know, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. But this is the unthinkable, and a lot of organisations have sort of been very, very quick to respond to get their workforce, you know, back up and productive very, very quickly. Our own company ourselves, we responded very, very quickly, and were asked a number of times by a lot of our clients, how are you going to support us through this? And fortunately, we could respond again very, very quickly. There's some of the things you can see there on the script, you know, they are things that we need to avoid moving forward, because this is here to stay, you know, and I think the future of work now has been proven to be, as we've said before, you know, a hybrid. So just before we, you know, wrap up, what was the topic of this session? In crisis lies opportunity. And I think there's opportunity here for a lot of organisations such as yourselves, to, you know, to really speed up the, you know, the transition of and the shift to virtual engagement, you know, both inside and outside, I think, of organisations. I think people are being pushed at a speed that was not necessarily on their roadmap. I think that's pretty clear. But I think adopting and accelerating new technologies can be done at scale. You know, we're not saying go out there and get an enterprise solution to solve all solution problems, because, you know, that's not the way the world works, and certainly budgets are not there today to actually go out and do that. So it can be done at scale. So I think evaluating your current technology stack, you know, is what you've got, is it giving you value? You don't have to throw it out and start again, but you just need to, I think, understand if it's providing your customers and your employees the ability to survive this world that we're living in. I think, you know, before we go to the last slide, you know, are you providing a digital experience? Everybody's been going on about digital transformation for many years. I know I've been banging that drum for many, many years, and I'm sure John has as well. But, you know, is the digital experience that you've got, is it based on your capabilities, or is it based on the needs and the requirements of both your internal and external customer? I think that's a question that needs to be raised. So are your knowledge workers, are they empowered to actually keep you in business in this remote world? Okay, Adam, if you could go to the next slide, the penultimate slide. Okay, so I think everything that John and I have talked through, all of it is achievable. As I've said, it's, you know, take it, chunk it down, normalize it. And the road to digitization, you know, with artificial intelligence, with robotics, it's all technologies that support the future of work. You know, I've covered a few points, and I know John has certainly covered a lot in more detail. And I think just before to wrap up, I just want to say thank you for listening to us. And I say thank you to the MGAA and the team there that's given us the opportunity to talk to you guys. It's been very much appreciated. And I look forward to having a future session actually at Minster Court, and potentially having a drink afterwards, which would be lovely. So I'd like to say thank you to Adam as well, the invisible Adam that's been doing the slideshow for us. And I'll hand back to Helen.
Hi. I've just got a couple of questions, if I may, Karen.
Yes.
RPA technology, if an organisation decides to introduce that, how complex is it to do?
Right. Well, we have a subject matter expert on the line as far as RPA is concerned. I can answer that question, but I think John. I think I will hand across to you because this is something in your DNA, I do believe.
Well, you know the definition of an expert, don't you? An X as in has been, and a spurt as in a drip under pressure. So that's the joke for the day. So how difficult? I mean, it's I don't want to oversimplify it, but you know, RPA is sometimes known as the proof of concept graveyard, and I think it is a very heavily hyped technology. You have to certainly have your feet on the ground. That's why when I talk about RPA, and I don't have all the answers, but I like to think of task automation rather than process automation. So a lot of the vendors, I think, in my personal opinion, are very guilty of setting their stall out to say, you know, we'll automate this process from here to here. And I think that that's over the top. And I think if you can think smaller tasks and, you know, chunk them down, I like that expression, break them down into, you know, small wins, then I think these systems are very, very practical and extremely effective. I mean, Kofax, I'm going to blow their trumpet for a minute, wave their flag. They acquired an RPA vendor that had been in the market nearly 20 years when they acquired them. And they have 500 installations around the world of production RPA. And some of their case studies on the Kofax website, and Karen, you'll be able to provide this information for anyone on this call, are just outstanding, but they're quite mundane. You know, they're not boiling the ocean. They are truly transforming a customer experience by just joining up the gaps, and they evolve over time. So there's a company called Davis Turner who have over 500 robots in production. It takes them now less than an hour to create a robot on average, create a robot and deploy it. The reason it takes an hour is they have a set of templates that they've worked on over, you know, the years that they've had this installed. They simply select the right template, the sort of job that they want to do. They make the changes at the operational level and deploy it. And, you know, I could witter on all afternoon about it. Perhaps we should set up another session to go through this. But, you know, there is a technique for approaching RPA. And, you know, to answer the question, it can be anything you want it to be. How long's a piece of string? But I've seen projects delivered in less than a month from inception, you know, to delivery. And happy to take that offline if necessary.
Okay, thank you. I have another one. Do you have any sense of the scale of the impact of automated document processing?
Ooh, now, what do you mean by that? That's a tricky question. The scale. It's all relative. So, do you have an example of who posed the question?
No, I don't, I'm afraid.
I mean, I'll take that. Again, you know, as the Americans say, mileage rates vary, or how long's a piece of string.
Yeah.
If you take the classic example for digital transformation and automated document processing, which is, you know, mundane as ever, it's invoice processing, invoice automation. We know that a AP, an accounts payable invoice professional or clerk, as they used to be called, is 3 to 4 times more productive. In other words, in a year, they process 3 to 4 times more invoices than they do without automation. So again, it depends on the type of documents, the process, the complexity, the accuracy of data we have to verify it. Mileage rates vary, as the Americans say. There's a lot of dependencies, but again, people overcomplicate this task. They try to boil the ocean. They hear this word automation, and they think automatic gearbox, or they think it should be just doing everything. And the reality is, even with machine learning, that you have to have modest steps and be grateful. Even if the system is delivering 50% automation, that's a major win, because you've given back 50% of the time that your knowledge workers, who frankly are not paid to do this sort of work, are spending. What we've done is, as PCs and personal computing systems proliferated through the 90s and the noughties, and here we are in 2020, we still have knowledge workers keying information between systems, bridging those gaps. And invariably, they're keying information from documents and messages. And so if we can stop that, or if we can massively reduce it, then we're going to be ahead of the game. So they are effective, but as always with IT, it depends.
Okay. Thanks, John. I have one more. We're struggling to generate reports to get to our remote workers. Is there something available for us to utilise to alleviate this issue?
Yeah, again, as John said, we can do anything, but it depends. It depends. But yeah, I think I can actually probably relate back to a particular client that I'm working with very much, and we've covered this off actually throughout the session. It's access to back office systems. So yeah, we can use the technology to extract that data from that back office system to then distribute to that remote worker. It's all dependent on obviously compliance and from rules and permissions. But yeah, it's a absolutely achievable task. But again, there is dependencies. As always, we will never say, yes, we can do it straight away without some further analysis. But from that particular question, I see no issues with that.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Well, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Karen and John for an excellent presentation, and to all of you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.